Like most prairie communities, people grew up and lived and died. And at some point in the last 20 years or so, people began to say, when good old Jake died, all the stories that good old Jake knew are lost.
When you come to the Heritage Center, we have a second floor where half is Manitou Beach history and the other half is Watrous. We'll highlight each room and just share with you the history of the past. And then you can just go on your own and wander through, as we have a lot of exhibits where you could read and go back and learn more about the history of this place.
As we are all aware, we weren't the first people to live on the prairies, and things like the arrowheads, these all came from a farm north of Manitou Lake. When they farmed, they would find that the wind would move the soil, the sandy soil it was, and they would go out and collect arrowheads. The display is probably highlighted by this huge stone. It was probably used in the preparation of food and the pounding of berries and things like that. The early Aboriginals certainly used Manitou Lake as healing properties. They were transient at all times. They never parked very long in any area, and then they moved on. But they did use the lake for healing properties.
There is a picture of the first settlers here in 1908. When I walk through here, I always think of those people and how they built this town, and really how, if they could just see what they have created and what has happened to it and how it was built since then.
Two farmers actually set up Manitou Beach. The luck of the draw is when you went and got farmland, you got what they gave you. And you can imagine their first shock when they came to Manitou Beach, to the lake, and that was their farmland, and it wasn't too good. As settlement occurred, it really was to utilize the water. As the lake area developed and became more of a tourist spot, some beautiful old buildings were constructed. Dancing was a really big entertainment. So Danceland was one of 3 dance halls. Danceland still exists, still carries on with a horsehair floor. My parents owned and operated the chalet pool, and everybody there was from Manitou Beach. 2 of my grandchildren that I said, I want you to come through this place with me. They didn't show a great deal of enthusiasm, except they were polite, and I was their grandfather. It was an hour and a half they were here, and then I had to tell them they had to leave. And they just learned so much walking around here.
We can certainly show your children and share the history. We have a little children's room, a kid's room. There's a blackboard and an old typewriter they can bang on.
Manitou Beach didn't have a school, but Watrous did have. This is a model of what that first original school was like. It was opened up in 1909. In Watrous, it was primarily a railroad town when it started. Many people thought that Watrous would simply dry up and blow away, become another small place, but it didn't. The town was really highly dependent on the railroad. With so many miles across Saskatchewan, they had stations all along. And so they had to have names, so they named them in an alphabetic system. So it starts at A and goes up to B and goes to A again and keeps on going. And much of what we had depended on the CN. That changed, but Watrous stayed.
It is fantastic when local people come here, and they come here with their visitors that they have. And with both of us touring, they share their experiences, and in turn I learn and they learn. It really adds to the tour.
Watrous and Manitou Beach has done a number of things that made it important and notable in those early years, and CBK was certainly one of them. CBK opened in the fall of 1939. Some of you may remember that something else happened in the fall of 1939. The world went to war. This was a vital communication station, 50,000 watts, could be heard down into the States, up north, and to the sides. I remember that there were armed guards patrolling around CBK, but it was also very important because as far out as into the Atlantic, ships could pick up the CBK. And that still carries on. This radio station still exists, not the speaker part or the office part from here, that's all in Regina. So Watrous, like every other community in North America and in fact in the world, was highly affected by both world wars. We honor those who served and who some gave their lives. This is the display of Edna Schrader, and she survived the Second World War in Poland, walked across Europe after the war was over, a single girl. She had one piece of clothing, and that was her dress that she walked across Europe in. Edna made it from Poland across Europe and to Canada and to Watrous, and said, this is where I'm staying. Settled here, married here, had a family, and I'm pleased to tell you that the family's still here. As the beach aged and so forth and got older, Manitou Beach got a bit left behind. It depended more and more on the highways coming into Watrous and a changing world, and Manitou Beach had to change too. And so all of these people who had built these bathhouses and who built the different places passed on or moved on, and my parents were one who stayed and kept the beach going when it seemed that they weren't going to very much. And in 1983, when the pool here burned, White's Pool had been torn down and there was nothing, so a group got together, built the spa and the hotel, and Watrous is frankly booming again. People come from miles around and sign the visitor book and say, wonderful, thank you so much. When people come here, they don't come here to look at old equipment. It's about people and the people who built this place.
We are really grateful to the residents. The center is run by donations and volunteers, and we are so grateful for that. Our website is www.watrous.heritage.ca.
If you have program ideas you'd like to see on maxTV Local, let us know at SaskTel.com/local.